It wasn't on the radar of anyone. I recognized what I thought was great writing, what it could be, and I believed so much in it that I wanted to take people on that ride, and I went over and...
For 5 years, Kevin Costner reigned as the undisputed king of television, turning Yellowstone into an absolute cultural powerhouse. But behind the scenes, a quiet storm was brewing. When the Hollywood icon abruptly walked away from his show, the media turned against him. Now, Costner has finally broken his silence, revealing the shocking truth behind his dramatic exit. The Shattered Patriarch. In 2024, Kevin Costner was finally ready to clear his name. For almost a year and a half, he had stayed completely silent while the Hollywood press tore his lifelong reputation apart. Major entertainment magazines were running constant, coordinated stories that painted a brutal picture of the actor. They claimed the Oscar-winning star had become an uncooperative diva who wanted a massive payday for almost zero actual work on the set. For a long time, the public only heard one side of the story, and it made Costner look like the ultimate Hollywood villain who turned his back on his own crew. This was different from the Kevin Costner millions of people had watched on their television screens every single week. Yet the rumors claimed the actor behind the character and on their screens was acting out of pure ego. When Costner finally started speaking to reporters during his independent film tour, he didn't hold back. He gave a direct warning to his fans, explaining that the corporate narrative floating around the media was a carefully calculated lie designed to protect the studio executives who wanted everyone to believe he was the problem. But what was actually happening behind closed doors was a massive, multi-tiered breakdown of trust. It was an old-school Hollywood icon, clashing directly with a modern corporate streaming ecosystem that operated on a completely different set of rules. People just couldn't understand why anyone would willingly walk away from the biggest show on television, especially when the financial stakes were so high. Costner turned his back on a contract extension that was legally tracking to pay him $24 million. Walking away from that kind of guaranteed pay sent immediate shockwaves through the entire entertainment industry. No one in present-day Hollywood could remember any celebrity leaving that much money on the table. Paramount Global executives instantly went into a total tailspin after they found themselves in a massive panic because their absolute biggest flagship franchise was suddenly missing its main cast. They had to scramble behind the scenes to completely overhaul their future plans and rewrite their entire broadcast strategy. This legendary fallout was never about a simple scheduling conflict or an actor being difficult. It was more about the result of a complicated web of broken corporate promises, constantly changing timelines, and a huge amount of personal risk that Costner was forced to take on. To truly understand how this multi-billion-dollar partnership disintegrated into public backlash, we have to take a step back to the moment Kevin Costner rescued a dying Western genre and single-handedly put a struggling television network on the global map. The rise of the Dutton Empire. Back before the show launched in 2018, traditional network television was not looking for Westerns. And major movie stars were not signing up for basic cable shows. Costner was an Oscar-winning director and a verified movie industry titan who had spent his entire career avoiding long-term television commitments. Stepping into Westerns was a massive gamble for an actor of his status, and it completely changed how the industry viewed cable dramas. The original arrangement was actually supposed to be a short, highly focused commitment. Costner signed on believing the show would only run for a limited 3 seasons. He approached the project as if he were filming a long-form cinematic trilogy rather than a standard television show that would drag on for a decade. This 3-season plan made perfect sense for a movie star who wanted to protect his schedule for other film projects. However, the unexpected happened the moment the series hit the airwaves, completely defying the initial agreement. The show instantly turned into a massive cultural phenomenon. It captured a huge, largely ignored demographic of viewers across America who were hungry for a gritty, traditional family drama. The viewership numbers skyrocketed, routinely outpacing major broadcast network hits by bringing in over 10 million live viewers per episode during its absolute peak. Because of this historic success, Costner's star power gave him the leverage to be entitled to a much more befitting salary. His compensation eventually escalated to a massive $1.3 million for every single episode he filmed. His presence did far more than secure high ratings for one show. Costner became the anchor that allowed creator Taylor Sheridan to build a sprawling television empire for Paramount. With Costner providing instant prestige, the studio easily launched multiple highly successful prequel series, including hits like 1883 and 1923. To the public, the creative partnership looked completely commendable, especially as it portrayed an unbreakable brotherhood between Hollywood's ultimate cowboy star and the most prolific writer in modern television. The unmatched growth of this show began to quietly shift the balance of power on set. The show was no longer a small, focused cinematic project, and the sheer scale of the franchise meant that the creative priorities of the studio and the writer were constantly expanding. This hyper-growth slowly changed the dynamic between the lead actor, who expected a structured film environment, and the visionary creator, who was suddenly managing an entire network universe. But as the Yellowstone empire rapidly expanded outward, the foundational architecture of the main series began to buckle under corporate pressure, setting off a silent ticking clock behind the cameras. The massive success of the early seasons paved the way for a major turning point in the lifetime of the show. Recognizing that their entire television network rested on his shoulders, Paramount executives approached Costner with an offer to guarantee the long-term survival of the franchise. He agreed to a historic 7-season promise, signing a highly lucrative contract extension that covered seasons 5, 6, and 7. This agreement gave the network security, and it guaranteed the fans that the powerful head of the family would guide the ranch through its final chapters. The corporate structure supporting the series completely altered the production plan midstream. Paramount Network, alongside the production company 101 Studios, decided to transform the 5th season into a supersized order, splitting the episodes into 2 separate blocks known as Season 5A and Season 5B. This formatting change completely disrupted the usual filming rhythm, fracturing what was supposed to be a straightforward production period into an unpredictable, multi-part operation. This sudden change triggered an agonizing 14-month limbo. After the mid-season finale of Part 5, finished airing in January 2023, the production stopped filming. Months rolled past without a single day of shooting, leaving the entire cast and crew completely stranded without clear answers about when they would return to work. At the absolute center of this massive delay was a critical shortage of completed scripts. Costner faced growing frustration as the studio repeatedly failed to deliver written pages for the second half of the season. As an experienced filmmaker, the actor found himself completely unable to do his job because the materials weren't available. This unstructured environment created a massive clash with the rigid reality of feature film productions. The legal frameworks made things even more complicated because Costner's contract contained a strict first position clause. This legal reality meant that the television show held absolute priority over his time, forcing him to keep his schedule entirely clear and plan his life around their moving targets. The studio continually kept moving their filming windows, completely destroying his ability to schedule any outside professional work or line up independent film crew dates. Every time Paramount pushed the production window back, it erased the open periods Costner had carefully reserved for his outside projects. This ongoing organizational mess forced the actor into a major self-preservation decision. Eventually, Costner decided he had to actively protect his own career legacy and valuable time against a corporate system that seemed incapable of setting a fixed schedule. Stranded in a state of indefinite creative paralysis, he chose to stop waiting for unwritten scripts and finally unleashed a deeply buried 30-year-old dream project that would change the trajectory of his entire life. The 30-year obsession. This passion project was a massive Western epic called Horizon: An American Saga. The historical origins of this story went all the way back to 1988, which was the very first time Costner envisioned and co-wrote the concept. For decades, the project sat on the shelf while he waited for the right moment to bring it to life. The story he wanted to tell was built on an unprecedented scale. Costner envisioned a sprawling, 4-part cinematic project designed to look at a brutal 12-year window in American history. The films would cover the difficult years before, during, and after the American Civil War, showing the harsh realities of westward expansion. Because the scale was so incredibly vast, the traditional Hollywood system was terrified of it. Every major film studio turned down the project. Executives looked at the massive financial scope and the risky plan to release multiple movies in theaters back-to-back, and they completely passed on the opportunity. This massive wall of rejection forced the actor into the ultimate financial gamble. His belief in the Western epic was completely uncompromising, so he decided that if the Hollywood studios would not pay for it, he would fund a massive portion of the production budget himself. The actual numbers behind this decision were staggering. Costner directly invested $38 million of his own personal wealth straight into the production. In order to secure that amount of money, he had to mortgage his beachfront estate in Santa Barbara. With his own money funding the operation, scheduling became a matter of extreme precision. Costner carefully planned his movie shoots to perfectly align with the exact hiatus gaps that Paramount executives had originally promised him during the breaks on the television show. He thought he could shoot his movies while the network prepared the next scripts, creating a smooth balance between his two obligations. Now, because of the unforeseen gaps in shooting for Yellowstone, things weren't going as expected. He had a self-funded project lying in wait with hundreds of crew members who he had to pay out of pocket, waiting around in Utah while a television studio struggled to finish writing scripts. With tens of millions of his own dollars now riding on a razor-thin timeline, the fragile peace between Costner's personal cinematic dream and Yellowstone's chaotic reality finally shattered. The Clash of Titans. Taylor Sheridan, who was the co-writer and director of Yellowstone, and Kevin Costner were both used to getting their way, and so friction was almost inevitable. They were two absolute titans of the modern Western genre, but they had completely different ways of working, and neither man was willing to back down. The root of the problem came down to Sheridan's unprecedented workload and his hyper-expansion at the network. Paramount had handed Sheridan the keys to their entire streaming empire, tasking him with creating and writing multiple high-profile shows at the exact same time. He was simultaneously trying to manage Mayor of Kingstown, Tulsa King, and Lioness alongside Yellowstone. To make matters even more complicated, Sheridan insisted on the complete death of the traditional writer's room. He demanded to write every single episode of his shows entirely by himself, completely avoiding the standard collaborative teams that most Hollywood productions use to share the workload. This one-man writing system created a massive bottleneck that ran directly into Costner's rigid expectations as an old-school director. Throughout his long career, Costner had always worked with meticulously polished scripts that were delivered months before a shoot began. Instead, he was being asked to wait indefinitely for a single writer who was stretched thin across an entire television universe. At the same time, a subtle creative divergence began to brew between the two men. They started having quiet disagreements regarding the moral trajectory and the eventual narrative fate of John Dutton. Costner cared deeply about protecting the dignity of the family patriarch, while Sheridan wanted complete freedom to take the story in whatever dark direction he chose. This creative disagreement was made worse by a literal Texas-California rift. Sheridan operated out of his centralized ranch headquarters in Texas, surrounded by real-world cowboys and corporate power, while Costner maintained his base on the West Coast. The physical distance mirrored the growing emotional distance between them. Eventually, direct and constructive communication between the two stars completely withered away. They stopped picking up the phone to talk through their problems as partners, and their personal relationship suffered a breakdown. Every question about schedules, script changes, or character choices was suddenly being handled entirely by formal legal correspondence between high-priced Hollywood lawyers. As this internal Cold War intensified behind closed doors, a series of calculated media leaks began hitting the press, turning public opinion entirely against the series' beloved star. Around early 2023, there was a sudden media onslaught that took the entertainment world by storm. Toxic headlines exploded across major entertainment sites, painting Costner as an arrogant, uncooperative roadblock who was single-handedly destroying the completion of the show. The most damaging claim circulated through the Hollywood trade magazines was a very specific dictatorial rumor. These articles claimed that Costner was refusing to film for more than a single week on the entire second half of Season 5, essentially giving the studio an impossible ultimatum. This specific rumor triggered a massive fan backlash across the country. Millions of passionate viewers who had spent years supporting the drama suddenly turned on Costner, filling social media with angry comments and accusing him of abandoning the hard-working cast and crew for his own massive ego. For a long time, Costner had to sit back and watch his reputation take a beating. When he finally felt free to share his raw refutation during his press tour, his response was explosive and direct. He called out the reports as absolute lies, stating clearly that the studio executives were the ones choosing the filming days, not him. The real truth behind that famous one-week offer was actually a good-faith compromise by Costner to protect the story. He had already fulfilled his contractual obligations, meaning he had no legal duty to return to the set at all. Despite that, he offered a single week of his time to shoot a definitive wrap-up scene so that his character would get a proper ending and the fans would not be left hanging. Surprisingly, the studio allegedly took that private, protective gesture and spun the narrative into something ugly. Production executives reportedly leaked the conversation to the press, but altered the context to make it look like Costner was being greedy and demanding. Through it all, Costner never came online to debunk it. Neither Paramount nor 101 Studios ever stepped up to issue a public statement defending his name, even though they knew the online rumors were false. The whole situation was messy for Costner, who felt abandoned. He had dedicated 5 long years acting as the literal face of the show that put the entire network on the map. To be discarded and vilified by the very executives who made billions off his name left a bitter taste in his mouth. While fighting a losing battle to protect his professional integrity in the court of public opinion, Costner's private life took a sudden emotional and financial hit. A brutal public divorce. In May 2023, right in the thick of the television scheduling chaos, Costner's wife, Christine Baumgartner, filed for divorce after 18 years of marriage. The sudden move caught the actor completely off guard. He was already dealing with a collapsing television empire, and now his family was breaking apart at the same time. The separation rapidly devolved into an extraordinarily bitter courtroom battle. Because Costner was a massive celebrity, the media covered every single legal filing with aggressive scrutiny. The private details of their marriage became daily entertainment for millions of readers. The legal battle escalated quickly when his ex-wife made astronomical financial demands in her initial filings. She requested massive monthly child support payments that exceeded $248,000, claiming that the children required that specific amount to maintain their standard of living. This demand put the actor at a financial loss, especially because he was in a uniquely vulnerable position. Almost all of the money was heavily tied up in financing his independent movie. He had no money, which meant the sudden legal fees and cash demands put an immense financial strain on his personal wealth. The courtroom battle also triggered an exhausting amount of public scrutiny, focusing directly on his multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio. Lawyers and reporters dissected the value of his private ranches and properties, making his living situation a matter of public debate. This situation took a massive emotional toll on Costner as he tried to manage his daily work. He was facing the nearly impossible task of maintaining his creative focus while directing a massive historical film epic on set during the day, only to spend his nights dealing with aggressive divorce lawyers. The loss of his predictable television check quickly became a central point of argument in the hearings. His ex-wife's legal team used his massive, reliable revenue stream from the network to argue for higher support payments, while Costner had to explain that this reliable source of income had suddenly vanished. The public witnessed the rare sight of an iconic Hollywood legend appearing completely exposed. In the span of a few months, he was losing his hit show, a large portion of his wealth, and his family all at the same time. Yet it was within the very divorce courtroom that the true financial stakes of the Yellowstone corporate dispute were revealed to the world. Because the hearings required mandatory testimony under oath, Costner had to make an involuntary disclosure of his business dealings. For the first time, the public received concrete, certified numbers regarding the behind-the-scenes television feud, rather than the usual vague rumors from internet gossip sites. During his time on the witness stand, Costner openly confirmed to the judge that he had negotiated and received a massive $24 million contract offer to cover 3 seasons. This figure proved exactly how valuable he was to the network, but it also exposed how bad the relationship had become. The trouble started when Paramount began backpedaling on those exact financial and creative guarantees. Once the production schedule completely fell apart and the scripts failed to appear, the corporate executives tried to alter the terms of the deal. They wanted to adjust his payout based on their own internal delays. This corporate retraction ran directly into a critical legal protection known as pay or play clause, which means the studio must pay an actor the entire agreed salary even if the project gets delayed, canceled, or filmed without them. Costner believed the network legally owed him every penny of that $24 million because he had kept his schedule completely clear for them. The standoff reached a boiling point when Costner issued a direct litigation threat right from the witness stand. He openly declared to the courtroom that he would probably go to court to force Paramount to pay his outstanding millions. This public warning sparked intense legal posturing behind closed doors, with Costner's powerful Hollywood attorneys and Paramount's corporate legal department trading angry memos over who actually breached the contract first. This courtroom moment instantly stripped away the romanticized facade of the cowboy show. It exposed a raw, cold, multi-million-dollar corporate standoff that had nothing to do with creative storytelling and everything to do with corporate accounting. This public declaration of a potential lawsuit served as the absolute point of no return. Once a lead actor threatens to sue the very studio cutting the checks, any future return to the set becomes a total operational impossibility. With legal warfare looming and bridges burned to ash, the final, definitive nail in the coffin arrived via a direct video message from the patriarch himself. Crossing the Rubicon. In June 2024, Kevin Costner completely bypassed the typical Hollywood PR channels and uploaded video on his official Instagram account. In the clip, Costner confirmed what his fans had been dreading for months. He stated clearly that after spending a long year and a half focusing heavily on his independent Western films, he was officially not returning to Yellowstone. He wanted to offer total transparency to the public, avoiding any more vague studio rumors. While delivering this difficult news, he made sure to honor the strong fan connection that had formed over the years. He expressed a heartfelt acknowledgement of the deep, life-changing bond he had forged with millions of loyal viewers over 5 historic seasons, thanking them for their unwavering support. He carefully framed his departure to protect the dignity of his character. Instead of presenting his exit as an act of angry defiance against the studio executives, he described it as a realistic, logical conclusion to an already incredibly messy situation. He wanted the audience to know he cared about the integrity of the story, even if the logistics could no longer work out. The direct message created a massive viral shockwave across every major social media network. Within minutes, the clip accumulated millions of views, instantly shattering any lingering fan theories or insider rumors about a secret surprise return for the final episodes. However, it brought closure to the situation, signaling the ending of an era for the #1 rated drama series on American cable television. The main character of the entire franchise was officially gone, leaving a massive void that couldn't be filled. The public announcement triggered an ultimate rewrite panic behind the scenes at the network. Costner's final statement officially forced Taylor Sheridan to completely scrap his original plans and rewrite the entire conclusion of the multi-billion-dollar series on an incredibly tight production deadline. The viral video answered the what once and for all, but it wasn't until a series of raw, unedited print interviews that Costner finally exposed a much deeper problem. During the Cannes Film Festival, he sat down with major industry outlets like Deadline and GQ to give a tell-all interview. He gave a detailed breakdown of the moving target blame, explaining how the studio repeatedly altered filming dates after he had already cleared his schedule. Costner had blocked out months of his life to honor his contract, but the goalposts kept moving. He shocked the entertainment world by revealing a frustrating, empty-set reality. Costner actually shut down his own multi-million-dollar movie production in Utah, sending his crew home to ensure he arrived exactly on time for the scheduled Yellowstone shoot. When he showed up ready to work, he discovered a completely empty set because the scripts were not even written yet. This organizational failure cost him valuable time and money, directly accusing Paramount and 101 Studios of fundamentally mismanaging the production logistics of their most profitable intellectual property. The actor fiercely defended his 40 years of professionalism in the entertainment industry. He reminded his critics that he had never once missed a single day of work or violated a signed contract throughout his entire legendary career. He expressed an absolute refusal to beg or apologize for taking basic career self-preservation measures when the television studio could not provide a solid, functional filming schedule. Costner wanted to expose the unrealistic corporate expectation that an international film star should keep his entire life on hold indefinitely while studio executives struggled to organize their production timelines. These revelations completely flipped the script. The narrative changed him from a greedy, difficult actor into a dedicated professional simply trying to defend his livelihood and his independent projects. The public began to realize that the chaos was caused by behind-the-scenes corporate mismanagement rather than a star player walking away out of pure vanity. With Costner's side of the truth fully exposed to the light, the ultimate question shifted directly to the screen. How would Yellowstone handle the sudden loss of its main character? This created an unprecedented writing challenge for Taylor Sheridan. The immense pressure rested squarely on his shoulders to wrap up a massive, sweeping narrative without a single new second of footage from his main star. When the highly anticipated return of Season 5B finally arrived in late 2024, it turned into a massive premiere event. Millions of fans across the globe tuned in, driven by a singular curiosity to see how the show would handle the fate of the family patriarch. The show didn't waste any time on delivering an instant and shocking resolution. Within the absolute opening minutes of the premiere episode, viewers discovered that Governor John Dutton was dead, caused by a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, sending immediate shockwaves through his family. The story took a swift turn, uncovering a calculated twist. This unceremonious exit provoked a furious fan response across the internet. A massive wave of viewer anger flooded social media platforms, with millions of loyal followers calling the off-screen execution a highly disrespectful insult to Costner's years of dedication to the show. Despite the anger, the final block of episodes dealt with a strange narrative reality. Even though Costner was physically gone from the set, his character's memory dominated every single frame of the final episodes. While Yellowstone forced its way toward a bloody, compromised conclusion on television, Kevin Costner's massive $38 million financial gamble was simultaneously facing its own brutal day of reckoning in theaters worldwide. The hard reality of Horizon. The film premiered at the prestigious Cannes Film Festival, where the first chapter of Horizon received an epic 11-minute standing ovation that brought Costner to tears. Unfortunately, that festival magic did not last. Once the movie had its wide theatrical release, mainstream critics gave it a cold shoulder, panning the film as an overly long and disjointed experience. This critical backlash led to a disastrous opening weekend, with the movie pulling in a meager $11 million during its crucial domestic run. The low numbers forced Warner Brothers to make an unprecedented, bruising decision. They abruptly pulled the second chapter from the schedule, canceling its planned theatrical release weeks before its debut. Yet, in a display of ultimate resilience, Costner fiercely refused to back down. He kept scouting independent funding and aggressively shot the third chapter completely outside the studio system. This move came with a lingering financial threat, as a massive percentage of his personal fortune remains heavily tied to the four-part epic. The bitter comparison was hard to ignore. He walked away from a guaranteed television paycheck to face the repercussions of his artistic obsession, which is the true cost of creative freedom in modern Hollywood. Regardless of it all, it's not the first time Costner has gambled. He famously invested a lot of money into Dances with Wolves, which won Best Picture against all odds. Today, this historic feud reveals a major shift in the entertainment industry. The landscape is changing rapidly, highlighted by the Sheridan paradox, where Taylor Sheridan signed his own massive developmental deal with NBC Universal shortly after the dust settled. Through it all, Costner achieved the preservation of his personal dignity, refusing to let a corporate entity dictate his time. He chose the power of ownership, holding on to his own intellectual property instead of remaining a hired actor on someone else's television show. This independent spirit preserves his unchanged icon status, proving he remains one of the last true, untamable movie stars in American history. Much like the legendary John Dutton himself, Kevin Costner ultimately decided that he would rather burn his own empire to the absolute ground than surrender control of his destiny. Was Kevin Costner's choice a masterclass in creative integrity, or did he sabotage his own television legacy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more Hollywood breakdowns. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.